Welcome to Agency Exposed. I'm sitting here on a cold winter/fall morning with my good friend Ken Ott and Brad Ayres. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Great.
You said winter.
I did.
Is it winter?
Is it 29 degrees out? Then it's winter. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's actually fall, I guess, depending on where you are and when you're listening to this.
It's beautiful, though.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is beautiful as long as you're inside. You guys are both northern boys, so you're okay with this, right?
I have converted to warm weather.
This is not warm weather.
I don't do well in the cold anymore.
Brad, you're okay with it, right?
Yeah, I'm okay. I grew up in Detroit.
That's cold.
Yeah.
So this is like, that's why you question if this was winter for me.
Yeah. I tell people I'm so tough. I vacation in Detroit.
In the wintertime.
In the wintertime. in January. Yeah, it gets gloomy in January in Detroit a little bit. I feel sorry for people that are going to be there in January, even though it's a lovely city. I love Detroit. It's in my heart.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of your experiences there, hopefully in episodes coming up. One of the speaking of the podcast,
that'll be my therapy.
Yeah, we can all probably. Isn't this all of our therapy?
This is definitely my therapy.
We've never really talked about the name of the podcast, Agency Exposed, and how we got to that. You know, our conversations offline, whether it's over a cup of coffee or, whenever, what do we name this thing? What would be interesting? I don't want to be too cheesy, but I'd love to hear from you guys. As we decided on Agency Exposed, it just seemed like the right fit for many reasons. So you guys want to talk about that a little bit?
Mm. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
No. Well, I would say, that's the challenge of having three guys on it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that in my mind, we're all three of us, and probably anyone listening is at a different level in some sort of agency, whether that be, they're just a freelancer and that's great, and they're just starting out and they're thinking about it, or they're doing service work as their vocation, or they run a small agency, or they run a really big agency. But in my mind, in that sort of journey of building a service business in that agency world, it seems like more than any other business, there's a very tight-lipped community on all the information of what's working and what's not, good and bad. And I find that you'd often see someone else, big or small. I've got friends all over the place, and Brad and Bob, you both do too. Like, big and small, you see people, and you're like, and they're owning or running or inside of some beautiful, amazing agency with, the dog in the office, and the 3D printer on the side.
Ferrari in the garage.
Yeah, the Ferrari in the garage, and doing all kinds of cool ad agency stuff. And you're like, wow, they must have it figured out. And then you kind of, turns out they don't. No one has it figured out. And so everyone's sort of struggling in silence with their own kind of stuff and trying to figure out how to do all these things, like, do payments, billing from clients, and how do you do that in a way that's healthy, and how do you market yourself and get more leads, and how do you determine how much you work on the business versus in the business, and all those kind of problems. And everyone's trying to figure it out. And I would just have loved to, during my journey, have been able to hear other people talk freely about those things, what's working, what's not. And I would say the purpose of this podcast is for me to learn from you guys and everyone else. No, I mean, but there's I think all three of us are wanting to discuss and learn, and then share what we've learned that's working or not working with everyone else to effectively shortcut.
Yeah, that's good.
If possible.
Yeah. I think a lot of us get into this business because we're passionate about being practitioners of our craft and what we do, but so much of us, we may not have business degrees. We may not understand really how to run and grow a company. And I think that's always been the challenge for me, because I went to school for art direction, the creative side of advertising. And so at the heart of me, I'm just kind of an artist. I tell people I'm kind of like take Michelangelo and take Albert Einstein, and if they had a baby, that's my brain. It's really a dichotomy of craziness. But I feel like every day I'm trying to understand how to do things that I feel like there's people out there that either intuitively know this, or they've been trained, or they've been in an environment their whole career that allows them to be, understand financing and understand how to grow a business. And, things we might talk about today is how to capitalize a business and other things. And, I think that's my challenge is I just don't know. I just do what I feel is the right thing for the right time. And I try to bring in as many people and thoughts and ideas and talk to people to get experiences, especially even in other industries, to help me to say, okay, how do you do this? Even if it's not in the same industry, it's still the same problem that we're having. We're still a company that's growing, or we're a company that does this, and we're dealing with HR or whatever else we're having to put energy into to grow the business. So again, I'm just saying, Ken, we may not have all the answers for you, so don't.
I'm out.
I've been in this business for a long time, and I feel like every day I'm just learning something new, and it's exciting. I love learning. I mean, I love learning every day. I just don't want to learn the hard way sometimes, and that's one thing that I'm very averse to risk. It's just the nature of who I am.
You can just listen to me talk, and you don't have to all the failures.
Exactly.
And you can,
I thought you meant all the wisdom.
It's funny because our culture, this fail fast kind of mentality is such. There's something real to that to me. It's this idea that we have to learn to be okay with what they call failure, but fail fast, get back on your feet, and that's where you learn, and that's where you really grow. We're working with a company right now that their whole ethos is to pivot fast, and sometimes it can cause a whirlwind within the organization because the leaders pivot fast. But sometimes in some industries you have to pivot fast, and in this industry you have to pivot. Some people see that as a change of mind or a failure or whatever, but the reality is it's just part of where we live now. It's just our society. Right. Things move so fast. Technology moves so fast. You can be disrupted. Your company can be disrupted overnight, and you don't even know what happened because you're not willing to change. And I think that's the key for me is that, I'm a creature of habit. So I like things that I can plan on and think about and have a perfect plan for 12 months. And if something changes in 3 months, I'm kind of scattered. I'm like, ooh, what do I do with this? This wasn't in the plan. Right. And so anyways.
Yeah, for me, I would say too that the name really speaks to the authenticity of just echoing both of what you guys. I can't really add much more than to say this is a business of putting best foot forward all the time, right? This is what we do. People hire us so that we can make them look the best that they can be, so that they can sell more product. Because you don't want to. They're not going to hire you to make them look bad. But the other side of that coin is you can easily take on that kind of persona and thought process in your agency. Like, we are successful. We are the best. We are the ones that are going to,
it's a facade.
It's a facade because like you said, we're constantly failing at things behind the scenes. I'm failing in the way that I treat my staff. I'm failing in the way that, we tested something and spent money and it didn't work. But we're trying to fail fast, right?
Yeah.
So talking about those failures as well as the successes, I think people are hungry for that today.
Yeah.
And, I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan's podcast, love him or hate him. One of the things that I appreciate about his podcast is he'll talk to someone for 2-3 hours. And they'll go down rabbit trails of, hey, he'll say, like, what was it like when you were strung out and addicted and living in the ditch? And these are famous, what people would see successful. But in our society, we all hear in sound bites that are like 30 seconds or 1 minute. And so what are you going to say in that time? You can't say, well, I really screwed up and here's how I got back on my feet and let me tell you the story. No, you use that time to constantly say, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. The Ferrari's in the garage. The beautiful dog sitting on my lap, and now you can have it too. But what you don't see is, the years and years and daily struggles of that guy to get where he is, to have a good month or to have a good year. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that, to let people know they're not alone. It's okay. This is part of it. This is the struggle, but know it's worth it in the end.
I think we got the failing thing covered. I think we'll have plenty of that to talk about. All the mistakes and things. And in all seriousness, though, like that's probably true. And then I don't know about you guys, but every single I have tried to condition myself to every mistake or everything that perceivably failed or a problem, et cetera, you learn from it. And so there have been learnings that we can kind of talk through.
Absolutely.
And I think we're all in different kind of business sizes and different areas of the industry. And so whether you're like a freelancer or you run a small marketing agency or you're managing inside of a big traditional agency, hopefully there's something that you can kind of take away from this.
Yeah. Well, let's pick up on the last episode, which we talked about how do you market your business, what tools do you use, and we kind of started to open that package, but we never got to the point of, okay, well then how do we execute? How do we pay for it? And I know, Brad, one of the topics that you've been kind of batting around with us is how do you scale and capitalize the marketing of your business and the growth of your business? And just, capitalization is always the struggle with an agency owner, specifically a small to medium size. So I think we ended last week talking about some of these tools and methods. Are you guys using currently, whether Facebook ads or LinkedIn or YouTube, to market and promote your business right now?
Yeah, I'll go. We play in obviously heavily in the world of Facebook ads because we work in the consumer space. So all of our clients were running, millions of dollars of Facebook ads for them and other things. That's been an interesting one. So like we go there as part of our marketing strategy, and obviously we're a B2B company just like you guys. And so I don't know what your experiences have been, but for me, we've had to we haven't found the golden goose in Facebook, and it's harder than ever to do that, even if you're a consumer business. But when you're a B2B business, you have to think about, okay, how do you utilize Facebook? Because it's a highly consumer platform. If I look at the audience of Facebook, probably less than 1% are my ideal client, right? Like who would actually, so what should we or can we be doing there that makes sense for that audience that also benefits our business? And so we do use LinkedIn. We could talk about that, paid LinkedIn a little bit. We've had some wins and some struggles there. We obviously do a lot of Google advertising, those kind of things. But I think at the end of the day for us, we go heavily on teaching and content. And that's a cliche, like a lot of people say, do a lot of content. I don't think you should
give away value.
Yeah, give away value. I don't think you should do that. And I can get on a little soapbox a little bit, but only do it if you've got a real passion around a particular point of view inside of your specialty. Because if you're just teaching if your content's just like, hey, the top 10 ways to do Facebook ads, you can do some of that, and we do some of that. But at the end of the day, like what we try and have is we try and give away everything we know and hold nothing back, and also do it in a way that we have a particular philosophy that we've found to be successful here, and that's what we're teaching. And then we do it and we try and make it interesting. Like if you're reading an article or you're watching a video of ours, we want you to laugh or find it funny or find it interesting to read regardless of the stuff. And so there's sort of like this entertain and educate thing, which honestly maybe content in itself we can just dig into as another topic on another day. But for us, it starts there, and then we tend to market those things in Facebook, in LinkedIn, in different ways. And the last thing I'll say on that is I think especially on Facebook, again, what are the percent of people on Facebook that are your ideal clients? It's probably a very small percentage for anyone, right? And so what we try and think about a lot is how do we get a more mass message that people can latch on to that will actually help maybe our brand awareness and our brand perception. So we exist for bigger reasons, and where I'll get to I'll end on this is like we exist for bigger reasons, and that's pretty much the message we put out on Facebook. So it's more like, we say we like our goal, our mission is to grow brands that matter. And so on Facebook, we'll talk a lot more about that conversation. And then it's certainly not a direct ROI, right? It's definitely not like, you know, the conversion metric on Facebook is not a lead form going through the website, because that's not what's going to happen. But conversation is important, and so that's kind of how we use that. And we actually spend right now our external marketing budget's probably a lot higher than most, I would say, and we could talk through those numbers as well.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, like, for your organization, how much of the percentage of your resources do you spend on new business? You know, I'm kind of amping up a little bit more of new business spending on my end, and you know, it's one of those things. It's a cost that you have to build in, and just curious, what do you think, in percentage wise,
For
like
us,
30% or less than that?
For us, I would say direct ad costs are probably 5 to 8%, like just spend.
Oh, just spend. I mean, talking about all overall agency resources. Like,
Right.
if you were to say, you know, all of our resources, we're spending
Time and
It's
people and
probably
money.
25%.
Okay. Yeah, that's higher than we are, and I think that's where, for us, we need to amp it up a little bit more, and it takes.
I don't know that that's necessarily for everybody though.
Yeah.
But you know, we invest in a lot of educational stuff. We do a lot of video. We do other things, and that's, I think, we're about that at that 25% mark. I would say though that a lot of people don't spend anything or very little, and so when you're talking about even just spending on marketing, I think you should be in the almost 10, pushing that 10% mark. Most of our clients are spending, and obviously we're in a direct to consumer business, but they're spending 35 to 55% of their revenue just on marketing.
Yeah, those numbers don't seem unrealistic.
Yeah.
I know, you know, let's get into the mechanics of what you're seeing is working for you specifically, Ken, since you've been doing a little longer. I know for me, historically, you touched on something that I think is really important for people to understand when it comes to whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, or any social network, that I believe in investing in those because they do have long-term returns. But one of the things recently, working with a client and helping them ramp up their social, and it was a little slow, but again, I'm a big believer in building that. And what social can produce for you as an agency is eventually it will produce real testimonials, because as you start that conversation and engage with people, sooner or later they're going to talk about you and your work. That's where you can capture that kind of information. And so, for instance, this client I was working with, they were working on social. All of a sudden, they got this amazing glowing review. It's just someone popped into the conversation and said, "Hey, I just want to say blah 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 blah," and it was about a long paragraph, and you couldn't have written it any better. It was amazing. It was a real person. So I showed it to the client. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, can we use that?" Well, of course you can use it. The person wanted to post it. So they took that and they started posting it on their social and reposting it, taking screenshots of the testimony. And so this product this person was talking about just started blowing up, and people started buying it simply because another person gave a real human endorsement, and you knew it wasn't written from somebody else because you captured the person that said it and their account and their picture, et cetera. That's the value, I think, of social media is you get those wins and those home runs, but it takes a lot of pitches to get there. But you do it enough, and then you start to see that snowball effect of, it's that social proof of, someone talking about Ken's company, someone's talking about Brad's company. And, the creatures that we are, when you're in that B2B, other people are like, oh, they're using that agency. They're using that agency.
Yeah. Well, you're totally right. And you're really an expert at all that stuff too. On our side, when we work primarily actually solely with e-commerce direct to consumer companies. And so the social proof aspect of that is one of the 3 or 4 foundational elements to creating success there. And so we see that work like crazy in the consumer space, as you would expect. I think conversion rate on a product that has, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's 20 more positive reviews, goes up significantly. And that makes sense, right? People believe what other people say about you versus yourself. And so when you look at that from the perspective of a B2B company or an agency, it's funny. I don't know if you guys see this, but typically also one of the sort of agency things, whether you're a client or the agency, is sort of like everyone's tight-lipped. Like, clients don't talk, like you don't talk. It's just it's like a snobby environment. I find it my role just to mess with it. Just like when I used to grow up in church, I used to mess with it. It's kind of the same thing. And so call it disruption, whatever. It's not really a business strategy as much as it is kind of interesting and fun to watch. But I guess where I was going with that is it tends to be hard. I don't know what you guys see, to get people to talk about you. If you did a great job, they only talk about you if they didn't like something.
Yeah, right.
And that's true in consumer, but it's also a challenge in this space. And so I would imagine most people are wondering, like, oh, wow, A, do I open it up to that? B, what if I ask for that? Because that sounds like, I might get rejected if I ask for a testimonial or something like that. But so for us, we've gotten really aggressive with that from the perspective of, again, it goes around to the type of content and the reason why we exist, which is something we'll talk about somewhere else. But I think you need to have a reason why you exist, because I think that's the silver bullet in some of this stuff. Because so what we do is a lot of times we'll try and we might finish a project. We'll be working with someone for a long time, and we'll ask them if we could just interview them on video about how, especially if it's a particular type of brand that's doing something really cool, like how they are a brand that matters and what does that mean, and just tell their story, tell their experience so it'll help other people. And we sort of actually go through this thing, this type of interview, and that's been really fun, really interesting. It provides a lot of value to people. And then from that also we get all sorts of sound bites and testimonials. Now, if you don't want to do something like that, and I don't know if that probably doesn't work for everybody, we do ask for testimonials straight out. And that's something that we do specifically in our process. And again, people believe what other people say about you, and so we do use those on social. But again, turns out our ideal client, it's great if Jim on Facebook sees my testimonial, but is he a client? Probably not. But that there is that sort of awareness effect.
Exactly.
That you just have to, again, it's all about, and it comes back to capitalization and how you spend your money, but we have a percent that we spend on that stuff that we expect no return on.
Right.
And I think that's kind of how
or long-term return. It's like you're sowing seeds.
Direct return,
And Brad, I'd love to hear from you, because one thing that you're really good at in your agency is, because of your background in creative and visual, you do some amazingly beautiful things, and you're able to highlight those, put them in case studies. What has been your experience with some of that?
Well, I think, for us, I think building strong case studies, we do different industries. So to us, that's kind of, it can be fun doing different industries, but at the same time, it can be a challenge, especially for new business, because, a lot of new clients are looking for a specific industry that has years of experience and are the best in that industry. And so doing case studies is really important for us, really highlighting a case study so that all companies can see themselves in that case study, even if it's not in the same industry. And it's basically about results. So I think for us, highlighting not only just the results, but the actual finished product and the thoughtfulness that goes into these products and these campaigns that we're doing, I think is really important. It's been important for us. And we're driving, specifically what we're doing is showing off these case studies, but then on social, on LinkedIn, and other press releases and other things, we're highlighting these case studies, driving traffic to them, specifically doing ads specifically for certain industries, and driving more people to these case studies than with a call to action on our website. One of the things that I've been personally doing to grow my business, and we'll still see what the results look like. But I've found that I've been so far pretty successful. Is over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been pretty active on LinkedIn and just procuring a strong, base on LinkedIn. And but I use LinkedIn a lot to publish content or publish ideas, and I find that the algorithms on LinkedIn, because not very many people publish stuff, that a majority of, or at least 50% are seeing the post based on your connections on LinkedIn, which is much higher in the algorithm than anything on Instagram or Facebook. And obviously LinkedIn is probably will have the right demographic on there that I'm connected with. So I find that that LinkedIn is fun because I post stuff about our client and stuff we're doing about our clients, and our clients actually chime in and actually comment like, "You guys are doing a great job, you guys," And so that's really fun because now all of a sudden all these people are liking it that are not even in my circle, because they're a circle of the person who liked it and a client. And so I'm finding that that is another testimonial. When your own client comes on there and says, "You guys are rocking it out," and they're a known client, that gives you, gives other the ability to see that firsthand, that communication. It's one thing to say something about what you did for a client. It's another thing for the client to actually come back and say, "You guys did a great job." It's a testimonial, right?
Right.
And so I'm finding that LinkedIn is a powerful place right now to be, especially if you're if you can create content, if you can create thoughtful content, if you can. Yeah, go ahead.
I agree, but I'm curious to know what specifically are some of the things you're doing. Obviously, so when you say posting content, you mean posting it in the LinkedIn sense, not just like taking a blog post, link and making a post, but you're actually like publishing it. So want to go through that, some of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things we've done is we're writing blog posts specifically on certain industries that we specialize in. So real thought leader type of
and using
content.
LinkedIn articles, not just a post.
Yes, and sometimes we do posts, and sometimes I do LinkedIn articles. So I actually post articles on LinkedIn. And so it's taking content and then kind of just, this idea of repurposing content and putting on different platforms. One article I did, I actually post also with a link back to our blog on Medium, and Medium picked it up and said, "Hey, we want to highlight your article," right? And it was an article in the automotive industry, more of a futuristic kind of look at it, of where automotive companies and tier suppliers are putting their focus on. And it got picked up by Medium and promoted on Medium, and the viewership went up big time compared to what it was on my own platform. And so just kind of taking this content that you're developing and trying to get it out there. And LinkedIn is a great place for it because it's not very many people are doing articles.
Do you do ads and things like that on LinkedIn?
We actually, it's funny, we are starting a campaign. So give me a couple month or so, I'll get back with you a little bit more on to see how that's working out for us. So.
Ken, you guys do YouTube as well, right?
We do a lot of YouTube lately. It's actually been a 2019 this year initiative.
Explain that process, just real briefly. What is it? What kind of content do you create? How do you create it, et cetera?
Absolutely. And so YouTube, a lot of people seem to talk about it this way. You may or may not have heard of it, but like YouTube is sort of like considered to be like what Facebook was several years ago. And that's what we see. We've used it for the last couple years really aggressively with some of our clients and seen tremendous success from it. What's cool about YouTube is you can get views if you have a good video and you do your targeting right, you can actually get views for fractions of a cent still, but it's a different strategy, right? It's not like really direct response. And so, one, you have to have sort of a reason that you do your YouTube channel, like what you talk about that cuts through the noise. That's probably the hardest part, and that took us a while to figure out, and we're still figuring that out. But all that to say is, we post once a week on YouTube, and I started about probably 4 months ago. We started doing shooting videos, doing video aggressively in our company earlier in this year, and then now we run a lot of YouTube ads. And the goal there is, I would say, what we see is our strategy is we're not looking for a direct response, right? And so we might link to the guide on how to do the thing we're talking about, or there'd be a deeper resource, but We really learned this from our work with all these direct-to-consumer companies that we ran YouTube for. Is really the great strategy on YouTube is someone's typically not, you're interrupting them, right? It's like a pre-roll ad, before they watch the video that they're going to watch. And there are a couple other ways, but that's primarily the way. You're interrupting them. They want to watch a video. So the likelihood of you getting them to click through to, buy your product or, submit a lead for your agency is probably low likelihood, but you should shoot for that. More likely, we find that people, will hopefully watch the video, and I'll just briefly mention that in a second. And then they'll finish what they're doing. They'll kind of like meander through YouTube and kind of go on their way because you're interrupting them. But so the way we've actually measured success is you'll actually start to see Google searches for your name. And so that goes to the strategy of how you create the video. But ultimately what we're trying to do is get Google Trends up. That's pretty much that strategy. And then you kind of actually load up on branded terms on Google Ads. And that kind of helps to make sure that when someone kind of sort of remembers what you do and your name, you actually show up. And that's kind of how that lead flow runs. But actually we've written about this strategy, and you could find it at metacake.com if you wanted to. But the last thing I'll say is when you create the video, it has to be created that way so that someone remembers your name. Right. And so there's kind of a structure of how you do those videos. And we've seen success with that. And what we've also seen is you want to learn from the engagement of the video. And so right now, we've gotten our engagement to be about 30% of people finish our videos, the ads. Actually, a little higher than that.
That's good.
Which is good. Just want to be pushing that up. But if you see people like dropping off after 5 seconds and all that kind of stuff, obviously you want to iterate on what you're doing. But that's kind of what we've learned so far on YouTube. We haven't really figured it out yet for us. But
one of the things that I've always preached and I've done fairly successful is that tell the story of your agency and what you're doing for other clients regularly to those clients, because inevitably what you're doing for one client is a little bit different for another, and for some clients is totally different. That's the nature of what we do. Now, for you guys, Ken, you guys are kind of focused on e-commerce and Shopify and a few things that you really. But for instance, Brad, I know that as a full service agency, you might be doing creative for one client, you might be building a back end for marketing for another, you might be just running paid media for another, right?
Yeah.
So it's important that you tell those stories and successes on a regular basis, because inevitably one of those clients is going to need that other service, and they're so siloed in what they're focusing on, they don't even realize that you're doing that.
Yeah. I would even say that's a good point. Like, isn't that why they pay you, right? Yeah. Like, they could find specialists to kind of like get in their organization. I would say, and I feel like clients and agencies don't necessarily realize this, but we're being paid for our experience across industries and businesses that we can kind of like give back to each one. So
I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we do have clients, and we literally sometimes find out that they've hired a different vendor to do something that we do, and we've never discussed this thing with them, and they never came to us and say, hey, listen, we have this other kind of challenge that we're trying to overcome. And sometimes it's just a matter of awareness of everything we do, and it's one of those things is that we don't want to become everything to everybody, but at the same time, we do specialize, and it is in our wheelhouse, and it's also good for one roof to do it because it has an idea. There's different things going on in marketing, and like, wow, you guys are doing it on your own, and it would be better if you brought that into the conversation. And so I think for us, we need to do a better job. That's one thing that I'm focusing on is how do we educate our client on other things that we can do for them? And it's constantly, I always say, let's constantly bring them to the beach. Like just constantly say, hey, can we come in there and just show you some things? Can we come in there and show you some things? And we just say, hey, we have an idea for you. We have an idea. And they're like, oh, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know that you guys could do that. And with showing them what we can do and what the value would be for them. And I think it's just a matter of constantly sharing that. And, I've talked to you, Bob, about that, about getting in front of them, showing off. I have this showing off things that we're doing for other clients sometimes is good because that shows that we do that, but also it may also say, oh, we need to be doing that too.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I've always said I want our clients to feel like we don't have any other clients besides them. But at the same time, I think that maybe that's the wrong way to think it. Yeah. Like we need to serve them like they're our only client.
Right.
And we never talk about, we can't get that to you at this time because we have this other project that's not yours. But at the same time, they need to know we're a growing business and they should want our business to flourish. They should want us to have other clients because they know that a client should know that the healthier an agency is financially, the healthier it is as growth, the better it's going to serve them in the end. It's going to give them more resources. It's going to give them, a strong partner. And so for me, I think, my mentality is like, let's put together content and share that just to our current clients. And let our clients know we're doing a lot of other cool stuff.
Yeah, and that could be as simple as a monthly newsletter that goes out that highlights 2 or 3 of your wins with other clients. It could be as simple as a case study that you personally share with other agencies. You might say, if you have a client that let's say you're running paid media for, and and you're trying to get them to for you to do a video for them, or you hear that they're talking to other companies about a video, you just say, hey, Bill, I wanted to share with you some stuff we're doing for another client of ours. Check out this case study of this video that we blew up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to do that, because I think that, like you said, there is this little of a anxiety of, well, I don't want to make them think I'm not paying attention to them. And all this success I'm having with this company, they're going to think, excuse me, how come you're not giving that success to us?
Yeah.
We're not getting that kind of success.
The challenge there, and we find, while that's really naive short-term thinking, it's really common, which is kind of baffling. It's like a little challenging, and so you also have to educate to that effect before.
Right.
So all that content that you're putting out, and if someone, we have a few coaches. We use coaches for things, and we have a sales coach, and I'll plug him at some point here. He's really good at this. He kind of coaches agencies on their sales, and what he says all the time is people make 80% of their buying decision before they actually talk to you, and so in that area. That's where we've seen maybe there's an opportunity. I don't know for sure yet to educate on some of these things that they're sort of mental shifts that are a little bit they sound counterintuitive to what they experience on a day-to-day basis. Because one of the challenges we're working against is I don't know about you guys, but I find that the agency interaction world, agency client, tends to be a little toxic, at least traditionally. So there's this idea that if I'm a client, the only way I'm going to get something out of you is if I beat it out of you.
Right.
And I'm not saying everyone's like that.
I'm going to abuse you because I'm paying top dollar.
Right. Certainly not saying everyone's like
that.
You
came in today with a limp. So
yeah.
Is that
I got beat down yesterday. No. I mean, and obviously that's not everybody, but there seems to be sometimes this idea that the only way I'm going to get something from this vendor is by being really aggressive towards them, and that probably comes from legitimate problems that come out of it, and there are issues on the other side. But in order to flip that, there are these mental shifts that you have to go through, and when you're doing it just the first time you're talking on the phone, it's probably really hard to do. And so, maybe there's that opportunity. At least what we try to do is kind of condition and educate anyone who's thinking about working with us. Here are the things you should consider. Here's also how we work. Here's why we think it's great for you. And one of those things is what you just mentioned.
I want to talk a little bit too about how, as an agency owner, we struggle so much to put ourselves first, our business first. Yeah. And we're so busy with our clients. And that's our biggest challenge. We've implemented something this year. You guys can look it up on the internet. Some of you listeners may know this about the 4 disciplines. And it comes from the Covey thought. And it's focusing on the WIG, the wildly important goal, and actually doing things that are actionable within your organization and getting stakeholders in your organizations to support the overall WIG, the wildly important goal. And so this year I put some things into place that are new business related as a WIG, and I had some of my staff, my key staff members, focus on that. And so if you look it up, just Google the 4 disciplines, and there's a whole process, and it's been fairly effective. It's been one of the most effective things I think that I've been able to do, because what it does is it helps your business to focus on the goal, the wildly important goal, not the whirlwind. The whirlwind is the stuff that daily gets in your way of getting your overall corporate goals done. It's the day in, day out work that consumes you, and getting your clients or getting your employees and your internal stakeholders to focus on something sometimes is really tough, because the stresses of the day in, day out work is really tough in this business, as we all know, a lot of deadlines. And so, but for me, that's been an important thing, and it's amazing because with this process, what you do is these stakeholders bring their own ideas of how they can support your WIG, and if it's new business related, then they're bringing ideas how to drive new business on their own, even if they're not in that new business space. If they're not salespeople, if they're not knocking on doors and all that stuff, they still can add value. So, for instance, one of the things that we did is we have our office, and it's next to it's inside a place called the Factory here in Franklin, and it's about 150,000 square feet. Well, they have a large event space. That there's tons of corporate events that go on, and literally the bathrooms are kind of joined into our company so they can see our sign. Well, one of our guys said, why don't we just put a flat screen out there and have our case studies and fun what we do out there? And so literally we got a new client because somebody was at that event, went to the bathroom and had to walk by our offices, and they saw this flat screen and it drew them in, and they're like, hey, I'm a healthcare company. We had a little slate on there of what we did for one of our clients who has an AI software for health tech, and we got a new client from it. And so in the end, it's just a flat screen and a new idea that we implemented, and it got us business. And so sometimes we have to think out of the box a little bit. We have to kind of go, okay, we can do all this promotion on social and advertising, get the word out, but the reality is the clients and my prospective clients, they're far and few between, right? And sometimes it's just hitting that where we know there's going to be enough traffic of those type of people. We know there's tons of business people that go to use this event space, and they have these big corporate events, and so they're coming out of there. And so just trying to understand where your potential client may be and trying to get in front of them. And again, some of this is just top of mind. It's just like, they don't have initial need, but when they do have a need for an agency like us, hopefully we'll be top of mind. We'll be one of the ones, like you said, Ken, the 80% of new clients already make a decision before they reach out. We want to be one of those on the top tier of a decision. We want to be one of those ones that they're optioning whether or not we may be a good fit. So for us, I would say don't be afraid to think out of the box. Don't be afraid to look at things you already have and go, how do we bolster these things? Or what are some unique positions about where we are, even the location where your company is, where the actual office is located sometimes can be a benefit. And so, we're even talking about doing Instagram walls and stuff like that to draw traffic and other things just to draw interest around our location. So
that's great. That's great. Let's talk a little bit. Let's spend the last few minutes talking about how do you capitalize that. I know, Ken, you talked earlier about what percentage of revenue, but one of the hardest things for an agency owner is how do you capitalize that? So you've got expenses like payroll, you have expenses, overhead, you've got marketing expenses. And it's real easy to say, well, you manage your money good and you've got your revenue percentage, but we all know in the agency world, that's not how it always works, especially when you're a small to medium-sized agency. You have clients that are medium to large that do, 60-day, net on invoices or longer. You have, you have up and down day. You lose a client, you gain a client. Talk to me about how you guys have successfully capitalized or the struggles of capitalization that you're dealing with now. Brad, do you want to talk about that?
Well, as far as our forecasting, it's really difficult unless you have strong year contracts or 2-year contracts that specifically you can rely on a certain amount of income over 2 years from a client specifically. That's a lot easier. But when you have clients who ebb and flow and they're spending, and that's really, and you don't, they pivot a lot too. So what they're doing pivots. It's really difficult to have your projections too far out. So for me, what I do is I sit down with my controller, and we sit down and we look at forecasting. But really, what we're able to really securely forecast is about a quarter out. So as far as capitalization, we're always looking at, like every business, how we're doing, are we able to grow? And the growth takes money. It just does. And so you can either capitalize it based on your profit, right? You could add more capitalization on your balance sheet by getting business loans or getting, debt on your business, or even looking at selling a piece of your business for equity to put cash on your balance sheet, or self-balance sheet if you're the sole. Like I'm a sole owner of my company, so I could put more of my own personal money on it to capitalize it. But in the end, we can only grow as fast as we have the funds and the means to do it. So, we've been growing year after year, and our profits percentages stay the same, but there's only so much from that profit every year. There's so much growth that we can have without bringing on either debt. And so, that's been a big struggle of us for ours. And right now I'm kind of looking at how do I add more cash on the balance sheet? How do I capitalize our growth so we can grow faster? Because personally, I can't grow faster because I hire a new person. Now we have to make a certain,
that nut
revenue
every month, right?
and not every month to pay for that and have that consistency. But I can't instantly add on 10 more people in my staff unless I have enough business instantly to add on 10 more people. So to me, it's always like we got to get a client before we can have it's cart before the horse kind of thing. And so I'm struggling with that right now of kind of what to do with that. We have a line of credit and stuff like that we can draw on if we need to. Right now our business is completely debt free, which is great. But there is a value to adding some debt to your company, especially if you're growing. You should have some debt. That if you're growing, you'll need it. You'll need it at some level, as long as it's smart debt, as long as it's paying for accounts receivables that are 60, 90 days down the road. They're not paying for. You're not risking it and throwing the dice down and going, okay, I hope that, this $500,000 loan, we're going to focus on new business, is going to pay off in a year. Right. If it doesn't, then we're done, And
a lot of people get in trouble that way. I know from experience, I know that it's really hard to capitalize. And so there's lots of options out there that almost are predatory for businesses like ours. So it's easy to capitalize, quote, but it's hard to make the right decision.
Yeah. It's for me. It's not that I can't get access to money. I can get access to money.
Right.
That's not an issue. But I don't want to get access to money and not use it properly.
Exactly.
That in a year from now I'm going to have a big debt that I can't pay back. So for me, it's not about finding money. In fact, I can probably self-capitalize my business on my own. But I want the business to run on its own in a very healthy way.
Right.
So for me, if I'm keep on capitalizing the balance sheet myself, then I'm personally just continuing to lose money personally.
Exactly.
And that's fine. And that's the best investment I can make is in my own business. Number one, the best investment I personally can make is in my own business. So I definitely see it like that.
But you don't want to take it out of one pocket and put it in another.
But I want to make sure that the company is growing and it's okay sometimes to add other debt. There's you can get a business bank loan and there's no equity that you have to give away. You can acquire some debt there and some growth. But we've kind of grown organically at this point, where we grow based on our client growth and our revenue growth, and but it is a slower process because. Much slower than I personally would like.
Right. Ken, how about you guys?
Man, I have gotten in a school of hard knocks, like MBA on this subject for over the last 3 years. Not in a bad way, but it's been a long process, and I'm happy to say that right now we are in a really good position for that. But I do believe it's because of that, and I'll happily share as much of that as possible. But like for us, and I think for any business, especially in the agency world, right? There's a couple things at play. Like, first of all, I don't know if anyone's gone to Tony Robbins stuff. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. He's a client of ours, and I've been to all his stuff, and I think it's great. He has this thought that in a business, you're one of three people. Right? You can be multiple, but primarily you're one of three people. You're either an entrepreneur, and that's someone who is not like the specialist, but they kind of see the vision, and they kind of like are using this business to get that vision. Or you're the artist, which is you're the person really good at, the design or the Facebook ads or the whatever else. You're really great at creating results. Or you're the manager, the leader, right? You can lead people and coordinate people and those kind of things. The thought is that you need all three inside of an organization. And I think the reason it's relevant here is I would say most agency owners are probably artists. They are really good at something and delivering results for clients, and they're not necessarily not even that they're not good at driving the business, being the entrepreneur, but it's just not the primary thing that they focus on and think about all day long. And so on one side, I think thinking about who you are is important, and then maybe at least being aware that, okay, I might be this thing. I might be the entrepreneur. So I need to obviously be really good at what I do. So I need to have someone artist. But I think more likely most people are artists, and they need to be aware of the business growth side that needs some dedication of mind space or just a person. And so reason I say that is like when you look at capitalizing growth and growth being marketing and all that kind of stuff, number one, like obviously you need to know what you do with the money. And I know and that's what we've been talking about all day long, right? Like, and it's I haven't figured it out. You haven't figured it out, but we're figuring out what do we do to grow the business. We have a sort of business strategy, which I can share now or another time, but to stay on topic, like, what do you do? What would you do with that money? I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, who maybe we should have as a guest on this particular subject. He runs a private equity company, and, he was saying that where you want to get like for value, where you want to get a business to is where someone can put money in and it double, it 2-3x's it on the other side. Like if you could build, like if that's the center of your target, like, that's what you need to build. So if you think about capitalizing it, if you put money into something, what's going to happen so that it actually multiplies is sort of where this comes from, right? So like you have to think about what you're going to do, number one. Now, number two, in order to capitalize that, like in my opinion, unless you want to take on outside, which you could take on investment, outside debt, that kind of thing to do that. If you wanted to self-capitalize it, now you have to look at your profit margins. And I would say, to me, in my experience with other agency owners, again, they're an artist, and so they're typically not looking at, like, in real detail, what are my net profit margins? Like, what does my balance sheet look like? What's the health of my organization from a financial perspective? For us, three or 4 years ago, I had I hired on a CFO consultant, and he kicked my butt on that topic because we kind of like knew our profit margins, and I've always been like very this financial health is a big awareness of mine, so it's never been like left to the side. But he's like, you don't know what people are doing and spending on. You don't know like the net profit of each project. You don't like all these things. Okay, so then you need to know your profit margin. For us, it's a minimum of net profit margin of 20%. If you talk to we work in the VC private equity world. If you talk to anyone in that world, they'll say, if your business is not at that, you can't invest into growth at minimum. We're above that right now, and that's great, but it's been a long path. But you need to sort of I would say that milestone is 20%, in my experience. And so to get there, now you get to like net profit margin, you have to know, what am I working on every day, and I have to track time. And if I have employees and team, they have to track time. Now, time tracking sucks. Everyone hates it.
Yep.
So we can talk about that as a topic another time, because we've tried to make it suck as little as possible. But
yeah, let's talk about that, because I think in our business that's been a challenge.
Okay.
How do we track everything so that we understand the profitability of every single project? And that's really been challenging for us. You have to have unique systems to do that, and you have to have discipline of your employees to actually do the time tracking and things that employees don't really care to do. And I don't, you always look at that from an employer going, do I want them spending, an hour every week trying to track their time? Is it worth it? What's really worth it?
And is it accurate?
Is it accurate?
Yeah,
because the reality is they become accountable to that time. They're like, oh shoot, how much time did I spend on that? And next thing you know, if they were to really account for their time on every project, they'd only show half the amount of hours a week that they actually worked, because we all know that, we do so much stuff, especially if you're jumping from project to project. And that's what we do internally is, our team isn't always dedicated to only one client. We jump across the boards and across the boundaries of other clients. And so you're jumping from one client to another client. You might work on 3 clients in one day. And, we know how that goes. So sometimes the time could not be accounted for properly.
One of the things that I'm doing now with the clients that I'm working for, I'm at a point in my kind of life and career where clients are hiring me to actually like manage and lead, both from the entrepreneurial, but also grow and scale. And I've got actually a mentor now. He's an older gentleman who was an executive at a big company here. And one of the things, and he was he's kind of got a CPA background, but also he's a strong leader in other areas. So kind of like the guy that you hired to kick your butt. He's kind of like that, but more of a mentor type. And so one of the things he instituted, and I'm starting, I do with the team that I manage right now, is every Friday, it's very old school, but it's very effective. Every Friday, I've trained them. It took a month or two to get them, but every Friday they know before closing, they give me a weekly sheet. And it's the top 5 things that you accomplished this week, the top 5 things you're going to accomplish next week, and your quarterly goal. So, so right now we're working on December 30th that they're going to get there. And so for them, I know at any given tape on a Monday morning, I can look at the whole team. I can get a snapshot of what they did, what they feel is important, and whether they met or they didn't meet their quarterly goal. Mm-hmm. So that does a couple things for me. One, it trains them to prioritize what their success and to prioritize their time. But it also allows me to have a snapshot to say, okay, what did we spend on this guy last week or this month or this quarter? Here's what he met. And if he met his quarterly goals that we both agreed were important, then we can put some sort of value to what was spent and what the return on. If he didn't meet his quarterly goals, we can then sit down and say, what can we do next quarter to help you? What's the problem here? What's the issue here? And I think something as simple as that, and like I said, it sounds very old school, but if you get a whole team of people in the habit of doing that,
and they're aligned,
then you're aligned.
Yeah.
Then you can put it on a board. Then you've got it in some sort of spreadsheet so that above and beyond looking at what other project management tool you have. Because like you said, Brad, you can look at all your team and you can see the tasks that they're doing at any given time. And you can run reports. But to see what their goals are and what they achieved and did they meet their quarterly goal, and that's hard because sometimes if they were a content writer, well, what's your quarterly goal?
Yeah.
Well, I think it opens up a little bit bigger company perspective for them because they can say, well, my goal is to serve my client every day. No, what's your goal overall? Well, my goal is to write, 100 pieces of content and it to reach X amount of people or whatever it might be. To me, that's really helpful because then you can work those quarterly goals into the overall company goal and you can get a better idea of, did you meet it? What kind of profit margin you have? And do you have the right people in place to meet your company goals?
Yeah. It's funny because, as a small business, I think every business owner struggles with this a lot. And as a business owner, and I'm, again, a sole business owner of my business, I don't have a partner. I feel sometimes very alone in my destination. Like where my drive is always a year or two out. Where most of my staff is focused on the day or the quarter, and I find that I don't. My staff is not focused on exactly. They don't seem to own my focus, and I can't expect that because they're the ones, I always say, they're fighting the battle. I'm trying to win the war. You know what I'm saying? Is like they're focused on the battle today and getting stuff done and serving clients, which is awesome. But my focus is out there, and I think sometimes it's harder to get my employees to think more long term. And I think by having these, looking at what their goals are for the quarter, at least gives them out there a little farther, and it starts to say, it's not really just what am I going to do in the quarter? What's my purpose? And what's my objective overall? Because during the day in, day out stuff, you can just become so consumed.
Let me give you
with
an
that.
example. If you've got a guy that's running paid media for you, that's one of his main goals.
Yep.
You can look at that and go, this guy has value because he runs all our paid media. And you can go in and look at all of the ads and how they're doing for clients and say, yeah, we're doing a good job. But if his goal is by the end of quarter one, I want to have at least a 2.5 return on ad spend for all my ads that I'm running. Okay, you look at that at the end of that quarter and you say, hey, Bill, I'm looking at the stats and you did 3 times. Great job. Okay, that creates an atmosphere for him of he's looking at the whole company. If you look at it and say he had a 1.5, you can say, hey, you didn't meet that. Let's talk about why. And it's not a shaming thing. It's more like, how can we help you get there? But if he goes 2 quarters, 3 quarters, and your ad guy is not hitting his 2.5% of return on ad spend, you've got to then, as an owner, say, is this a wise use of my money? And is this getting me where I need to be as a company?
Yeah.
That's what it allows you to do.
Yeah, and I like that because it does focus on the bigger picture of the company. And I think that's one of the challenges is that I sometimes, and I know this isn't, I don't think my employees do this on purpose, but I think it's just the nature of people, right? When you work, sometimes I feel like my staff doesn't, and maybe everyone feels like this a little bit, like the growth, if we grow too quickly, they're almost nervous about that. They're like, they're going to lose position. They're going to lose.
You're going to bring in other people.
You're going to bring in other people. You're going to, where am I going to be in this mix as we grow? Am I going to get lost in this mix a little bit more? Right now, I'm kind of, we're a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And as that pond grows, I'm going to become a smaller fish. Or they just like it. They like complacity, where they just like their job and they just want to go in and do their stuff and do it well and serve their clients and everything else. But then, they're not as excited about the growth. And so for me, all of my, if you watch me in my business, you'll see me get really excited when I talk about business growth and about where we could be and where we're going. And everything from my mind is all future based.
But you're the only one that's doing that.
But sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that is very focused on the future. It's almost like we're building a rocket ship and we're going to fly that thing to Mars.
Yeah.
And I'm so stinking excited. And everybody's kind of just concerned about building the rocket. You know what I mean? I'm more interested in getting to Mars.
Right.
At least for perspective, in my scenario, I would say it's not unlike that in the way that I'm at least me personally is probably the primary thinking about where we're going future wise, and I wonder if it's even possible for that not to be the case. I think that can be lonely sometimes because, not because people can't help, because they do and they want to, but almost because it's like, only it can't be a group decision. It has to be, there can be, and it's not really an ego thing either. It's like there really can only be kind of one person that's at least got the vision, and then you can bring more people on board, even partner wise, that can be the case. But then what I've found is, and someone, other people have told me this, I think it's true, is like, I realize that, we have a great team. People are passionate about what we're doing. And my biggest concern is making sure that I can live up to the passion that they have as far as like vision casting. which is definitely a high pressure, because I do think people need to feel like they're going somewhere, and if they don't, then they kind of get bored, burned out, or they don't have purpose, and you kind of have to give it to them. So the challenge is, but there also the other side of it that can be, I found that could be really that can create a lot of uncertainty. Like if I'm just like, hey, we're gonna do this, like in X amount of whatever. Depending on what I say, I can definitely create a lot of uncertainty in the organization, and so it's this careful thing of, like casting that vision, believing in it, and then bringing everyone on board with it, and then also giving them certainty through it, which is like what I've heard is like the number one quality of a great leader is like creating certainty in the people that they're leading, because I think that's the basic human need is certainty, this idea. And so, I don't know, that's sort of, those are some of the things that kind of go through my head as I look at that kind of stuff. And I've found there have been times when you can sense it in the room if you say something that is, that you think is great. But you don't realize that, oh wow, this may actually create a bunch of uncertainty for everybody. Like you can kind of even sense it in the room. And at the same time, there are times when I feel like, like people want to be moving somewhere, and if they're not, like it's kind of on you to make sure they're, you're growing or going somewhere.
Yeah. And I think it's, as a whole, as a company, every employee, their personality is different. Some people, they're more visionary, they're more focused, and those people are easier to get on board with your ideas. Sometimes I feel like, talking about a leader, I don't personally, and probably everybody feels like this, like I'm personally not built like a leader. I'm built like a forward thinker for sure. That's where my head is. But I feel like I'm still learning the art of cultivating that spirit of leadership, and so that folks can get behind me and they understand why I'm doing it. And I feel like I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is this leadership idea of growth. And even when we're talking about new business, this encapsulates that. But it's this idea that I have to lead, but I also have to serve my company. And I'm always wanting to make sure that, because I can come in like a bull and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and you guys follow me, and I'm running, and I need you guys to run fast with me. But at the same time, if I'm not supporting that idea and getting behind them and supporting them, then I'm not really practicing what I'm preaching. So I think it's a little bit of both. And they also have to see the value of what I'm going. If I'm going to Mars, they need to see the value of why we're going there. And they need to own that value so deeply that they're behind it 100%. And that's one thing that I've learned a lot, is that I can have a vision, but if half of my staff kind of looks at me like, okay, that's Brad's great little vision, but I don't really get it, or I don't really understand where we're going exactly, like, then it's not clear to them. And clarity is key, and for sure. And I'm still learning that. And it's but even as far as new business, even when we really put more energy in new business, they have to see the value of what that's going to get them personally, and I you have to look at everyone as we're just human beings, and we're so focused on ourselves, right? It's just the nature of being human. And I have to say, okay, what's in it for my employee? What's in it for this employee? What's in it for them? What can we do to help them get what they want? At the same time, help them believe in a vision that is greater than them. And it's always a challenge. It's super challenging.
I mean, so it sounds like what you're saying, and maybe this is a kind of a nugget here, is like, in order to be doing all those things, though, you need to be passionate about what's going on in your business, right? Yeah. And so, like, if you're running your agency, and I think this is a challenge with agencies, because a lot of times people fall into it just to kind of pay the bills, and so if you're not passionate about what's going on, then you need to, then I think sort of job number one in doing all that stuff, and then you talk about capitalization, all those topics, like the first question, I think, and I know this is a topic for another time because we have it down, is like, what is the reason you're doing it? And if you don't know what that is, then you probably need to. It's probably best if you take 2 weeks, like, and go somewhere and figure that out and
That's
do some
good.
soul searching. Because if you have that, then you can do all these things. Kind of start to fall into place a little bit better, right? You can, when you're talking about leading people, ultimately, like at the end of the day, as long as your intentions are true, like you want the best for your team and you want to get to this place because you believe it's better. People mess up and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, like that can come through. But if you don't know why you're doing it, then it's really pointless.
Yeah, and that gets down to vision and mission and all that stuff. So this is a good place to end, I think, because we've covered a lot, some really good nuggets in here. So I appreciate you guys sitting in and talking about it.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah. Again, this is my therapy.
I hope you guys feel good, and I'll
Brad's laying on a couch
send
right
you
now.
my bill
Yes.
at the end.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.